My husband took our life savings and disappeared the day after our daughter was born, claiming he wasn't ready to be a father. 8 years later, he returned broke and dying, asking to reconnect. I agreed but brought paperwork from the insurance fraud investigator. I'll never forget that moment. It's burned into my memory like a brand. There I was, lying in a hospital bed at Memorial West, still sore from a 26-hour labor that ended in an emergency C-section, cradling my perfect 7-pound baby girl with her tiny rosebud mouth and that swirl of dark hair that matched her father's. The nurse had just brought her back from her newborn screening. I was alone in the room, exhausted but blissfully happy, watching my daughter's chest rise and fall with each tiny breath. Then my phone dinged. A bank notification. At first I ignored it. Who checks their account balance hours after giving birth? But when 3 more alerts followed in quick succession, something cold unfurled in my stomach. I shifted Lily to one arm and reached for my phone. The screen showed 4 transfers from our joint savings account totaling $114,000. Every penny. We'd saved together over 5 years of marriage, gone in minutes. The transactions had been made by Daniel. My first thought was identity theft. Someone had stolen my husband's banking information. I tried calling him, my heart pounding, but it went straight to voicemail. I texted, "Someone's draining our account, call me now." No response. I pressed the nurse call button, panic rising in my throat. When the nurse came in, I asked if she'd seen my husband. Dark hair, tall blue button-down shirt. "Oh, he left about an hour ago," she said. "He seemed in a hurry, said he'd be back tomorrow." But something in her expression told me that wasn't true. I asked her to check my bedside drawer where I'd put my wedding rings after my fingers swelled during delivery. They were still there, along with my wallet and watch. But there was something new. A folded piece of hospital stationery. The nurse handed it to me and took Lily, sensing I needed a moment. With trembling fingers, I unfolded it. "I'm sorry, Victoria. I can't do this. I'm not ready to be a father. Don't try to find me." That was it. 6 years of loving someone, of building dreams. Together, reduced to 14 words scratched on hospital paper. I read it again, trying to make the words mean something different. They didn't. The nurse must have seen something break in my face because she pressed the emergency button. Within seconds, the room filled with medical staff. Someone took the note. Someone else took my phone. Someone took Lily to the nursery. And I sat there, numb, as a kind-faced doctor explained that my blood pressure was dangerously high and they needed to give me something to calm down. The last thing I remember before the sedative took hold was wondering if this was all just a nightmare. It wasn't. Updated. Guys, I'm overwhelmed by the support in the comments. So many of you have shared similar stories, and it's both heartbreaking and comforting to know I'm not alone. Several have asked if I had any warning signs before. Daniel left. Looking back, were there red flags I missed? I met Daniel at a mutual friend's backyard barbecue in the summer of 2013. He was charming, confident, with this crooked smile that made you feel like you were in on a private joke. Within minutes of meeting, he'd convinced me to try a pickle juice chaser with my tequila shot. Disgusting, by the way, but I was trying to impress him. By the end of the night, I'd given him my number. Our relationship moved fast. Too fast in retrospect. He moved into my apartment after just 3 months. We were married a year later in a small ceremony at my parents' lake house in Michigan. My father had concerns. "You barely know him," he'd said, but I was convinced I'd found my forever person. Daniel worked in pharmaceutical sales, or so he claimed. His schedule was erratic, with frequent overnight trips. The money was good, and he always had these elaborate stories about clinics he'd visited or doctors he'd charmed. I never questioned it. Why would I? He had business cards, a company laptop, wore suits, and had PowerPoint presentations about diabetes medications saved on his desktop. Looking back, there were moments that should have given me pause, like how he never introduced me to any work, colleagues, or the way he'd get defensive when I asked specific questions about his job. Once, I ran into him at a Starbucks downtown when he was supposed to be in Chicago for a conference. He claimed his flight had been canceled, but he never mentioned it before I saw him. Then there was the incident with my grandmother's emerald ring. It disappeared from my jewelry box, and Daniel suggested I'd probably misplaced it. 2 weeks later, he surprised me with a weekend trip to Napa Valley. When I mentioned the timing seemed suspicious, he accused me of not trusting him, of ruining a romantic gesture. I apologized. The pregnancy wasn't planned, but we were both excited, or at least I thought we both were. Daniel painted the nursery, himself, a pale yellow with little white clouds. He assembled the crib, researched the safest car seats, downloaded parenting apps. He even cried when we first heard Lily's heartbeat at the 12-week scan, but something shifted in the last month of my pregnancy. He became distant, spending more time at work, checking his phone constantly. I attributed it to pre-father jitters. Everyone told me it was normal for men to get nervous before the baby arrived. The night I went into labor, he was calm, supportive, holding my hand through each contraction. When complications arose and the doctor recommended an emergency C-section, he kissed my forehead and said he'd be waiting. He was there when they first brought Lily to me, took photos of us together, his eyes bright with what I thought were tears of joy. The next morning, he said he was going home to shower and get some things we needed. He kissed us both goodbye. And then he vanished, taking our future with him. The days after Daniel left are a blur of pain, both physical from the C-section and emotional from the abandonment. The hospital social worker helped me contact the police, but they couldn't do much. Daniel hadn't technically committed a crime. He was legally entitled to withdraw money from our joint account, even if it was morally reprehensible. And adults are allowed to disappear if they want to. My parents drove down from Michigan as soon as they heard, arriving with grim faces and practical support. They helped me discharge from the hospital, get Lily's first pediatrician appointment scheduled, and navigate the bewildering world of single parenthood that had been thrust upon me overnight. My mother stayed for 6 weeks, sleeping on the pullout, couch in my living room, getting up for midnight feeding so I could rest. My father hired a private investigator, but Daniel had covered his tracks well. His supposed employer had never heard of him. His social security number led nowhere. The car he'd been driving, registered in my name, was found abandoned at O'Hare Airport. It was like he'd never existed, except for the hollow space in my chest and the very real baby who had his chin and eyebrows. I was forced to sell our house. Without Daniel's income and with our savings gone, I couldn't keep up with the mortgage payments. I moved into a small 2-bedroom apartment closer to my job at the marketing firm where I'd been working before Lily was born. My maternity leave was cut short by necessity, and I found myself dropping my 8-week-old daughter at daycare, my breasts still leaking milk through padded bras and blouses. The daycare cost more than my rent. Formula cost more than my groceries. Diapers, wipes, doctor visits. The expenses piled up while my income stretched thinner. I applied for every assistance program available, swallowed my pride, and accepted. Hand-me-downs from coworkers, learned to coupon like it was an Olympic sport. Nights were the hardest. After putting Lily down, I'd sit alone in my apartment, wondering what I'd done wrong, what signs I'd missed. I drank too much wine and Googled my husband's name until my eyes burned. I joined online support groups for abandoned spouses, learning I wasn't alone in this particular hell. Somewhere in those dark months, between midnight feedings and dawn anxiety attacks, I stopped looking for Daniel and started rebuilding. I cut my long hair into a practical bob. I enrolled in night classes to improve my digital marketing skills. I found a better-paying job with flexible hours and health insurance that covered Lily's recurring ear infections. By Lily's first birthday, celebrated in the community room of our apartment complex with discount cupcakes and a few mom friends I'd made, I was different. Harder in places, stronger in others. I smiled in the photos, genuine smiles that reached my eyes, because despite everything, I had this amazing little person who called me Mama and showed me daily what resilience really looked like. I filed for divorce in absentia after a year of Daniel's disappearance. The legal fees ate up what little savings I'd managed to rebuild, but the closure was worth it. I was officially single again, though I didn't date. Between work, classes, and single, parenting, there wasn't time. And honestly, the thought of trusting someone again seemed as distant and impossible as flying to the moon. Then, 3 years after Daniel vanished, something odd happened. A life insurance company called. They were investigating a claim filed in Arizona for a Daniel Williams who had supposedly drowned in a boating accident. The policy was for $1.5 million. My Daniel's middle name was William, and they wanted to confirm if it could be the same person. I sent them what little documentation I had: our marriage certificate, his driver's license photo, the police report from when he disappeared. Weeks later, they called back. The claim had been denied due to suspected fraud. The body was never recovered, and the beneficiary, a woman named Alexis Saunders, couldn't provide sufficient proof of death. The insurance investigator marked us. Tanner became an unexpected ally. He was tenacious, methodical, calling me every few months with updates. Daniel had apparently started a new life in Phoenix with this Alexis woman. They'd been planning the insurance scam for years, targeting multiple companies. But after the first claim was denied, they'd dropped off the radar again. Meanwhile, life moved on. Lily started kindergarten. I was promoted to digital marketing director. We moved to a small house with a yard in a decent school district. I made monthly donations to a support organization for abandoned spouses and children, remembering how they'd helped me when I was drowning. And then, 8 years after he walked out of my hospital room, Daniel walked back in. Metaphorically speaking. It was actually an email that arrived on a Tuesday afternoon in March. "I need to see you. Please, it's important. The account name was unfamiliar, but I knew instantly who it was from. I should have deleted it. Instead, I read it 3 times, my hands shaking. I'm sick, he wrote. Cancer. Terminal. I know I don't deserve anything from you, but I'd like to meet Lily before I go. I'm back in Chicago. Just one meeting, Victoria. For closure. My finger hovered over the delete button. For Lily's sake, I should have pressed it. But something stopped me. Not compassion or lingering love, but a cold, clear curiosity. After nearly a decade, I wanted to look into the eyes of the man who had left us and ask, why? I forwarded the email to Mark Tanner, who called me within minutes. It's a trap, he said, voice tight. He's probably looking for another score. When I told him I was considering meeting Daniel, the line went quiet. Then, if you're serious, let me help. We've been building a case against him for years. This could be it. The plan was simple. I would agree to meet Daniel at a coffee shop near my office. I would listen to what he had to say, and I would bring Mark and his evidence of insurance. Fraud spanning multiple states and nearly a decade. I replied to Daniel's email. Thursday, 2 p.m., groundwork coffee on Michigan Ave. Just me, no Lily. One chance to explain yourself. His response came minutes later. Thank you. You won't regret it, but he would. Updated. Many of you are asking if I was scared to face Daniel after all these years. Honestly? I was terrified, not of him physically, but of what seeing him might do to me emotionally. I'd spent years rebuilding myself, and I worried one encounter could unravel everything. I couldn't sleep the night before our meeting, kept checking on Lily, watching her breathe just like when she was a newborn. Thursday arrived with threatening skies and a nervous flutter in my stomach that wouldn't quit. I dressed carefully, not to impress Daniel, but to armor myself. Navy blazer, crisp white button-down, dark jeans, the good boots I'd bought myself when I landed the director position. Professional, put together, strong. I told my assistant I'd be out of the office for the afternoon. I called Lily's after-school program to confirm they knew she'd be staying late. I texted my neighbor, who had a spare key in case of emergencies. Then I met Mark Tanner in the parking garage next to Groundwork Coffee. He looked exactly like his LinkedIn photo. Mid-50s, salt and pepper hair, sensible glasses, the kind of face that blended into a crowd. Perfect for surveillance work. You sure about this? He asked, handing me a small recording device to slip into my pocket. We can still walk away, let the authorities pick him up later. I shook my head. I need to see his face when he realizes. It's over, Mark nodded, understanding written across his features. I'll be at the table by the window. 2 uniformed officers are already inside, plain clothes. Just give the signal if you want to end it early. The signal was simple. Touch my earring twice. Mark and his team would intervene immediately. But I didn't plan on using it. I had waited 8 years for this moment. I intended to savor every second. Groundwork Coffee was busy but not crowded. I spotted the officers immediately, too stiff in their casual clothes, eyes constantly scanning. I chose a table near the back, facing the door. And I waited. He was 10 minutes late. Some things never change. When Daniel walked in, I almost didn't recognize him. The handsome, confident man who had walked out of my hospital room was gone. In his place was a gaunt stranger with hollow cheeks and thinning hair. He moved slowly, scanning the room until his eyes landed on me. I didn't wave or smile or acknowledge him in any way. I just watched as he made his painful way toward my table. Victoria, he said, voice raspy. Thank you for coming. I gestured to the chair across from me. Sit. He lowered himself carefully, wincing slightly. You look good. Really good. What do you want, Daniel? He flinched at my tone, but recovered quickly. I deserve that. I deserve worse, actually. He paused, coughing into a handkerchief. I have stage 4 pancreatic cancer. 3 months, maybe 4, they say. I kept my face neutral, though something twisted in my chest. Not sympathy. Something darker, more complicated. And you thought what? That you'd come back and meet the daughter you abandoned? Play daddy until you die? Leave her to mourn a father she never knew? He had the decency to look ashamed. I know it sounds selfish. It is selfish. But I've been doing a lot of thinking, facing my own mortality. He trailed off, perhaps realizing how pathetic it sounded. Where have you been, Daniel? My voice was steady, surprising myself. He sighed, shoulders slumping. All over. Phoenix at first, then Miami, Seattle, Denver. I wasn't a good person, Victoria. I made bad choices, got involved with worse people. Like Alexis Saunders? His head snapped up, eyes widening. How did you— I know everything, Daniel. The insurance scams, the fake drowning, all of it. He paled, looking around nervously. Listen, I can explain. I think the authorities would be more interested in that explanation, I said, nodding toward Mark, who was already standing up. Daniel followed my gaze, the blood draining from his face. You set me up. No, you set yourself up. I pulled a manila envelope from my bag, sliding it across the table. Bank records showing you emptied our accounts. Evidence of identity fraud in 5 states. Witness statements from other women you conned. I leaned forward. Did you ever love me at all? Or was I just another Mark? His eyes darted around, looking for escape routes, but the officers were already closing in. Victoria, please, he whispered, urgently. I'm dying, for real this time. Have mercy. I thought about the nights I'd cried myself to sleep, the times I'd gone hungry so Lily could eat, the birthdays and Christmases he'd missed, the millions small and large ways we'd suffered because of his selfishness. The funny thing is, I said, standing as the officers reached our table, if you had really been dying and come back to make amends, I might have found some compassion. But you're still running the same old scams, aren't you? Still looking for a payday. Mark approached, badge in hand. Daniel Williams? I'm Mark Tanner, insurance fraud investigator. These officers have some questions for you. Daniel's face crumpled. Victoria, don't do this. Think about Lily. That was the wrong thing to say. I leaned in, voice low and fierce. I have thought about nothing but Lily for 8 years. While you were off playing dead and scamming insurance companies, I was working 2 jobs to keep her fed. I was sitting in emergency rooms at 3 a.m. when she had ear infections. I was explaining to a 4-year-old why she doesn't have a daddy like her friends do. The officers were pulling Daniel to his feet now, reciting his rights. He didn't resist, his eyes never leaving my face. She has your chin, I said softly, and your eyebrows. Sometimes when she's concentrating really hard, she furrows them just like you do. Those are the only parts of you she'll ever know. Led him away, this shell of a man I once loved, and I felt nothing. Not satisfaction or closure or vindication, just an empty space where anger used to live. Mark stayed behind, watching me carefully. You okay? I nodded, gathering my things. Perfectly fine. The DA will want to talk to you, he said. This arrest will close cases in 4 states. I'll give them whatever they need. Just keep my daughter's name out of the papers. He nodded, understanding. You know, when we first connected, I thought you might be involved somehow. A lot of spouses are. But you're something else, Victoria. I smiled, a real one this time. Just a mom protecting her kid. Outside, the threatened rain had started, washing the streets clean. I opened my umbrella and headed back to my office, already planning what I'd say to Lily tonight. Not the whole truth, she was still too young for that, but enough. That her father had come back briefly, that he'd done some bad things, that he was going away for a long time. That it wasn't her fault. It was never her fault. 2 months later, I received a call from an attorney handling Daniel's estate. He had died in custody, his cancer diagnosis genuine after all. He'd left a handwritten will naming Lily as his sole beneficiary for a life insurance policy he'd actually legitimately purchased. The irony wasn't lost on me, the payout wasn't large, $50,000, but I didn't touch a penny of it. Instead, I established a trust for Lily's education and a small foundation to help single parents who'd been victims of financial abandonment. The Daniel Williams Second Chance Fund sounded better than he deserved, but the name wasn't for him. It was for people like us getting our second chance at life after someone tried to destroy it. Lily is 10 now, thriving in school, obsessed with soccer and space exploration. She asks about her father occasionally, and I tell her age-appropriate truths, that he wasn't ready to be a parent, that he made serious mistakes, that none of it reflects on her worth or lovability. She seems to accept this, though I know harder. Questions will come as she gets older. I have the therapy fund already set up for when they do. As for me, I'm dating again, cautiously. I own a home outright. I have friends and a career I love. The nightmares about Daniel leaving have mostly stopped. I never found my grandmother's emerald ring, but for my last birthday, I bought myself a sapphire one instead. Sometimes at night when Lily's asleep and the house is quiet, I look at it sparkling on my finger and remind myself, some things are lost forever, but others can be rebuilt, stronger and more beautiful than before. Updated. Thank you all for following this journey with me. Your comments have meant more than you know. Many asked about legal consequences. Daniel received 12-15 years for fraud across multiple states, though he only served 2 months before the cancer took him. The biggest lesson I've learned? Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Have you ever ignored a red flag only to regret it later?